So I've made several videos about the Japanese language, like slang or useful words, verbs, etc. But I've actually never talked about the Japanese writing system itself. So today I wanted to change that. Let's take a look at the Japanese writing system. So the Japanese writing system consists of two syllabaries, Hiragana and Katakana, and a logographic writing system called Kanji. The Hiragana and Katakana ways of writing are called syllabaries since, as the name implies, the characters come in syllables, or more specifically, haku or mora in English. They are not an alphabet and the individual characters are not letters. It's a syllabary. But what does that actually mean in practice? For example, you can write the character ka, but the individual k sound at the beginning can't be written, or any consonant for that matter, except for n. Like you can write ka ki ku ke ko, but you can't separate the k from the a or the k from the e, etc. But where does hiragana actually come from? Hiragana is derived from Old Cursive Japanese writing, which used to be just kanji and is used to denote grammatical inflections and particles. So anything that's kind of like grammatical is usually written in hiragana. A quick example of this would be mita, which means to have looked. The mi part is written in kanji, and the ta part is written in hiragana. Ta is like an auxiliary verb, and it just indicates the past tense. So, since that's grammar stuff, it is written in hiragana. Katakana has the same sounds as hiragana, but the characters have a more rigid kind of shape. Katakana is derived from parts of a kanji. For example, kami, which means God. The left part is actually katakana ne. And that is true for all of the katakana actually. All of them come from a part of a kanji. Katakana is mainly used for loanwords and words for which the kanji have been deemed too complex. So science words, animals words, biology words, etc. And lastly, kanji, which are probably the most intimidating of the bunch. These are logographic characters, so characters that represent a certain meaning or concept. But that doesn't mean every kanji represents a concept visually. Only like the basic kanji for like tree, fire, and sun represent their meaning kind of visually. Most of the time, they're actually not exactly logographic. Actually, I've recently heard someone come up with the name morphosyllabic, which I don't think is the official name, but it does get closer to what kanji actually are. There are units that represent morphology, so some kind of like meaning, and they also represent a syllabic sound, because every kanji you see can be written with a hiragana or a katakana, so a syllable. Anyways, kanji represent the meaning part of words. If we take a look at mita again, we can see that the meaning part is the kanji at the front, which roughly corresponds to a meaning related to sight. The same kanji, mi, is also used for words like iken, which means opinion. But what does opinion have to do with seeing something? Well, you could literally translate it as view, as in someone's personal view. You might have also noticed that the reading turned from mi to ken. Kanji sadly have a lot of ways to be read. The approximated Chinese readings, onyomi, are usually used when in a word with multiple other kanji. The Japanese readings, kunyomi, are usually used in adjectival forms, verbs, or whenever there's kana next to a kanji. So if you look at this basic sentence, ringo o tabemasu, we can see these three scripts coexisting with one another. Katakana is used for ringo, or apple, as the kanji version has been deemed too complex to write out. O is a particle, which is a word that tells us what role the unit preceding it plays grammatically in the sentence. So the O tells us what is happening to the apple, the ringo. The top part of tabemasu contains the meaning eat, and the be and the mas are just grammatical parts. The be part is basically just fluff and connects the meaning part and the auxiliary verb mas, which is written in hiragana and turns the verb before it polite. So this is a sentence that politely says, I eat an apple. So let's get to the question that literally everyone that learns Japanese asks themselves. Why the hell would they decide to have 3 writing systems instead of 1. Let me give you a simple example. Read this sentence. And now look at the actual proper Japanese version. As you can see, just hiragana clusters are very lengthy and they're kind of a pain to read. You don't know where a word starts or where a word ends, and in a lot of cases, what a word even is supposed to mean in the first place, as Japanese has a lot of homophones or same-sounding words. It's kind of like writing an English sentence like this. So now that I've went over all of the rules and explained what the writing system is composed of, let's get to the fun part. There is actually some pretty interesting cases where people pick one of the 3 scripts to make their writing more emphatic. The Japanese writing system is not really officially standardized when it comes to when to choose which style of writing, especially in casual contexts and social media. I mean, of course, there's all of these rules and people follow these rules, but when it comes to casual use, you actually have a lot of freedom to use whatever you like, because no one is there to arrest you for using katakana instead of hiragana. Alright, let me give an example. Writing are in hiragana just means that, but are in katakana means that. So in most cases, one's private parts. This is because using katakana is usually kind of weird for hiragana words like this. So by spelling it in katakana, you make it sound like there's more kind of like a nuance to it. Another one would be yaru. In hiragana, it just means to do, but in katakana, it's to do, referring, of course, to raunchy activities. You can think of this katakanification as making parts of the sentence italicized to emphasize them. It's also kind of like putting quotation marks on your words to make it sound sarcastic or ironic or just more emphatic in general. You can also write whole sentences in katakana to make them sound robotic or foreign. This is actually very common in manga. It's also common that the last syllable, the last hiragana of a sentence gets turned into katakana to make it sound more emphasized. So instead of tabemasu, it's tabemasu, to make it sound more fashionable, I guess. In most cases, it's pretty cringe, but you do see it in fiction or sometimes even on social media. Katakana can also be used to look a little bit more futuristic than hiragana or kanji. It sometimes also looks a bit more modern, fashionable, or cool, which is probably because of the rigid, blocky shapes. It gives a more modern vibe, while using kanji does give off a more old kind of vibe, especially if it's a word that people commonly just use hiragana or katakana for. Arigatou gozaimasu has kanji, but if you use them on social media or a casual situation, it does look like you're a little bit chuny. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. But let's look at the scripts from a pragmatic standpoint. Writing short exclaims in video game chats or live stream chats is usually done in hiragana, as you don't have to press an extra button to convert to katakana or look through the endless IME list of kanji to find the word that you're actually looking for. In some cases, you'll also find romanized Japanese in game chats for a similar reason. An interesting case is also pens in VR chat. In VR chat, there's people who actually just communicate by pen rather than using the text chat, since that is quite bothersome and, less intuitive in VR. If you've ever typed something on a keyboard in VR, you gotta pick the letters with your controllers, and it's just very unintuitive. So that's why people use pens in VR chat. This really depends on person to person, but I'd say there's generally more hiragana use than kanji use, especially once again in shorter sentences or exclaims. I mean, there's people that use kanji for sure, but only for important words or words that they want to disambiguate. An example of creative script usage can be found when looking at the lyrics of Inaba-san's songs. The main character, Osage-chan, seems to be kind of a young girl, so when writing the lyrics, they thought about which kanji a girl in her age group would know and which she wouldn't. So this is very apparent when you look at the music videos and take a look at the lyrics. Complicated words are written in hiragana, as that's a stylistic choice to reflect the actual character in the music video. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say. I hope you enjoyed this more in-depth kind of lesson. I've been meaning to make this video for a long time now. I actually recorded it once, but then I lost the recording and now I had to re-record it, but it was actually pretty fun. So yeah, I'm glad I finally got around to finishing it. Don't forget to leave a like if you liked the video and subscribe for more content like this. Feel free to follow me on Twitter if you want to know more about what I'm doing in between these YouTube uploads. And thank you to my supporters: Loa Warp, Akip, Seraphine2508, Danyanya, Aaron Mercer, Bingus, Jufo, Ginka, TS Virus 7, and Snaily for either donating once or supporting me monthly via Ko-fi or YouTube. If you want to support me as well, you can do that. I'll leave all of the links down in the description below. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I hope you have a great day and mata ne ra. Bye bye.